Hello and welcome to my Yugioh channel. Today we're looking at some new cards which are supporting Revolver, who was one of the main characters within Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, and we'll be looking at some new borrel archetype support. Reloaded Cylinder is a normal trap card with the effect you can only use this card's name's second effect once per turn. 1. Set one magic cylinder from your deck or graveyard directly to your field. If you set it from the deck, it can be activated during this turn. 2. When you activate Magic Cylinder, you can banish this card from your graveyard, double the damage its effect inflicts to your opponent. For anyone who doesn't know what Magic Cylinder does, it basically works when your opponent goes in for an attack with any of their monsters. It stops that attack and then it inflicts that amount of damage, the same as their attack, to your opponent's life points. It's a good way of depleting their life points and can actually be game ending if your opponent is on low enough life, or if their opponent's monster happens to have a high enough attack stat. It's a bit unusual that you do have support like this, but I think there are a couple of other examples where you are getting niche support for some of the very old cards, but some of the more popular ones. The first effect just lets you set a magic cylinder, which is perfect because you're then able to trigger that actually during the turn. The only downside is your opponent knows what you're doing, and if they know they have few life points, they're not going to go in with their highest attack monster. They will know what you are doing, and they'll know the read on this. The secondary ability I love because actually, if you compare this alongside a significant enough amount of damage, you can do potentially up to about 6,000 points of damage if you're looking at things like a Blue Eyes White Dragon, Borrel Dragon, anything with 3,000 attack, you're doing double the damage, and that's almost going to defeat them as an OTK. Rocket's Caliber is a level 4 Dark Attribute Dragon type tuner effect monster with 1,700 attack and 100 defense. You can only special summon with the way in this card's name's first effect once per turn. You can only use this card's name's second effect once per turn. 1. You can special summon this card from your hand to your zone a Dark Link monster points to. 2. You can tribute this card, special summon one Dark Attribute Dragon or Machine monster from your hand except Rocket Caliber. Now, a lot of the rockets work in their archetype by either destroying themselves and then triggering off some of their other effects. This one happens to just special summon itself, but you do have the ability to then tribute this to search for any of your Dark Dragons or Dark Machines, any of which all of these rocket monsters actually meet. And then you're able to trigger off those effects because it searches from the hand. It's a shame it doesn't come from the deck because that would be very broken for the deck, but other than that, it's a decent enough effect. Orb Code Dragon is a Link 3 Dark Attribute Dragon type Link effect monster. It's got 2,500 attacks, and the links are the top, the bottom left, and the bottom right. It requires 2+ effect monsters. You can only use this card's name's second and third effects each once per turn. 1. Cannot be destroyed by card effects while a link monster points to this card. 2. At the start of the damage step, if this card link summoned using 3 monsters as material battles an opponent's monster, you can destroy all monsters on the field. And 3. You can banish this card from your graveyard, banish one Dark Attribute monster on the field with 3,000 or more attack, and if you do, special summon one topologic monster from your extra deck or graveyard. The summoning on this card isn't too difficult to achieve. The rockets all tend to special summon each other or be able to destroy some of their archetype, which triggers off effects which allows you to then go into other special summon monsters. The first effect, to not be able to be destroyed by card effects while it's pointing to another monster. It's a perfectly decent effect, but actually, your opponent is going to be ready for this type of strategy and is going to try and get over this by battle. The second effect is very useful because if you have used 3 monsters to link summon this card, then you're able to just dark hole everything. It's good for most types of decks, but since it's a destruction based effect, there are certain monsters that are immune to destruction, and those typically are stronger monsters, the 3,000 attack monsters, or the level 10 monsters, for example, in which case you might not be getting as much advantage from this effect as you would think. The third effect, to banish this card, and then also banish a Dark Attribute monster with 3,000 or more attack, and then replace it with another topologic monster, is also quite decent. Within the archetype, you'll be going into lots of different topologic archetype monsters, and therefore most of those meet the criteria of 3,000 attack, so they're very consistent within their own deck. It's nice that it comes both from the extra deck and the graveyard, because you're not restricted to purely the graveyard. You don't have to set up just the graveyard. You can have immediate access from your extra deck. And the final card is Detonation Code. This is a continuous trap card with the effect: you can only use this card's name's first and second effects each once per turn. 1. If you control a topologic link monster, you can target one Dark Dragon, Machine, or Cyberse monster in your graveyard, except a link monster, special summon it. 2. During the standby phase of the next turn after this card is banished from the spell and trap zone, you can set this card to your field. The main benefit of this card comes from the first effect, just being able to revive any of your monsters. The Rockets all meet this criteria, so you're able to just constantly almost Call of the Haunted those monsters, and then you can help to pair into further link monsters. The second effect I don't think is that usable. I doubt your opponent is going to try and banish this card to let you recover it. And the thing is, it would be nice if it had a graveyard effect as well as a secondary ability. That way you can force it to be banished to recover itself. But then in that case, I think it would just be a once per duel type of effect rather than a once per turn effect. Overall, these cards are a bit underwhelming. I think most of them are pretty useless and don't really accelerate the way of the deck. The only one I'm looking forward to is that Reload Cylinder, which helps with the Magic Cylinder support, because it's very niche and it's tying you into a card which doesn't really see that much play these days. All the old players will be familiar with it, and even the mid-term to long-term players actually understand this card, but a lot of newer players, casuals, won't have ever seen this card before. What do you guys think of these cards? Do you think I'm being overly harsh? Do you think the Orb Code Dragon is actually quite useful? Or do you think the opposite of me? Do you think actually the Reload Cylinder is just a bit of a gimmick that people aren't going to pick up on? Whatever you think, leave those comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.